Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we've got a friend of yours on the show today because I know you and Jon have worked together with TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, and you will be able to talk a little bit, tell our audience what that is and what a great opportunity it is for military people. So do you want to introduce our guest?
I would be honored to. And Mom, you and I have been on the advisory board for TAPS for a long time now. It is an organization near and dear to my heart. They work with military families. And as you know, I am the mother of an Army veteran. And today we have someone that is an absolute expert in working with men and with military families. And he's done it for a very long time and has been in the military himself. And I will introduce him. His name is Jon Ganues. And Jon previously managed the men's program at TAPS, which is the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. He is a retired U.S. Army Warrant Officer with 21 years of active service. He is a lifetime member of the UA Army Warrant Officers Association and an Honorary Board Member of Henrico County Court Appointed Specialist Advocate. His work at TAPS was dedicated to his son, Airman First Class Jon Wesley Ganues Jr., who served in the United States Air Force and died by suicide in 2009. Welcome to our podcast, Jon.
Great to have you on, Jon. Could you tell us a little bit about your story and how you got involved with TAPS?
Sure. So I got involved with TAPS after my son John died by suicide in the Air Force. My wife and I were really struggling with dealing with his suicide death. And the TAPS organization was the place where we were able to finally connect with other suicide survivors, which is important for us to be able to move forward in our grief. Prior to that, we were struggling with um, how to move forward because no one that we knew personally or around us or in our family had lost a child, much less one to suicide. So the organization helped us connect with others. We were able to go to many presentations by experts to learn about grief, suicide, and how to move forward in our grief.
What did you learn?
I learned that connecting with others who you could share your story with and whose stories you could hear went a long way in helping us on our path moving forward. Through those connections of others, being able to relate to them, voice our struggles, voice our challenges, was very helpful because we learned above all that we weren't alone. Because we were in our little bubble thinking, we're the only ones going through this, but there were many, many others who were going through suicide loss and grief as well.
Mm-hmm. So peer support is one of your big.
Absolutely. Well, depending on the relationship that, you've lost, it's all about first finding answers. Sometimes there are a lot of whys and questions that people have. Why did I lose this person? Why did I lose that person? In some cases, there was illness involved, and you knew the reason why. Others were tragic things that happened immediately without warning and left you with a big hole in your heart. And I think finding ways to close that hole in your heart, which really never closes, but getting it smaller and finding ways to deal with the pain are important. Avoiding loneliness, isolating yourself, those things can be detrimental to your grief journey moving forward. So connecting with others, whether it's a professional or a support group or an organization, is important moving forward. Now, some people jump into that very quickly and they're uncomfortable, and some people wait until they're ready. Either way, you have to find out what worked for you. right? If you go to a counselor and it doesn't work out, you don't stop there. You either go to another counselor, you find some other way to help you move through it. But it's important that you try to move through your grief with support of others. Very few people can do it by themselves. And, medications and alcohol and other things people turn to always never really help. They sometimes make things worse. But in the bottom line is you have to find hope, a reason to get up the next day and live your life without the person you've lost.
So Jon, I'm wondering early on what kind of things help? How can people start doing that, working towards hope? You said peer support.
Yeah, so church, religious organizations can help, finding local support groups can help, talking to family members can help. Um, and hopefully all of those avenues give you the support you need because you need to lean on somebody. Um, I think people telling you things like they're in a better place or, you have other children or, there are a lot of wrong things people say to you that can really be a gut punch to you. So you have to connect with people who are truly understand what you're going through. So that means connecting with people who've had a similar loss, peer-to-peer connection. If you've lost a spouse, find a group or spouses that have lost somebody. If you lost a child, find other parents who's lost a child. If you lost a sibling, find a group that connects with siblings because your peers are the ones that understand what you're going through. They are either struggling with the same things or they have, and they can be the best support that you can turn to.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And I know that you oversaw the men's program at TAPS. Talk to us a little bit about what is unique and different about men in grief versus women.
Yeah, there is a difference. Men and young men and boys, knights in shining armor, who let things roll off of them. They're taught not to show emotions and weakness. And when it comes to grief, you have to, at some point, express your emotions. Um, and men tend to shut down because they don't want other people to see them be emotional. Um, in theory, yeah, that you want a strong person who's going to take care of things like I did. I put my feelings on the shelf when I left Wesley and got things done. But after the dust settled, I had my moments where I had my emotional breakthroughs. It's important for men to do that. Women um, freely express themselves. I'll give you an example. Uh, Take a park bench. A woman could be there crying and sobbing, and everybody stopping by will stop and ask her if she's okay, if they can call somebody, if she needs help. You put that situation where a man is sitting there, a lot of people will just walk by and make negative comments because it's a guy crying, right? So, as a society overall, we have to drop this thing about men being tough and not showing emotions because I know from experience, I know from dealing with a lot of other men, it's not healthy. We as men are allowed to express our grief and our emotions, and we should be supported and not looked down on for appearing to be weak. I always say that any man that is comfortable expressing his emotions, that's a strength, not a weakness.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that men are more likely to be vulnerable and open with their emotions when there's not women in the room? Because I know you do stuff with just men there and then things with both.
That is absolutely correct. If you have a room full of men talking about a sensitive subject like grief, and there's a woman in the room, they are more likely to be quiet. But if you have just men there, I've seen so many times allow themselves to be vulnerable and open up and peel the skin of the onions and open up and express your emotions, express how they're feeling, whether it's anger or sadness. it's really a beautiful thing to see them let go of the stereotypes that are placed around men and the strength and allow them to have those breakthroughs.
Mhm. I've noticed when I go to the Compassionate Friends, which is an organization for people whose children and siblings have
Hmm.
died. And what I've noticed is that the men tend to put their arm around and try to comfort the wife.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. They really want to fix them, help them.
Men are fixers, and that is one of the problems we have in relationships sometimes is men trying to fix things. I know from speaking with a lot of men, they go with their spouses to those things as support. They don't think they need it.
Right.
They provide that support to the spouse or the woman in their life, and they will either sit there quietly or sit there in anguish because they don't want to be there, but
Yeah.
they're there for the other person. So that's why in the TAPS organization, we created the men's program so that the men could have a place to go to where they could leave that armor at the door and come in and bring their authentic self and have those breakthroughs.
Yeah. Well, if you're not in the military, Compassionate Friends does some men's groups also at their conferences. But I want to say that something about TAPS, I just don't think people realize that if you are ex-military or if your child, was in the military but you're not feeling like, well, I can't go, that this organization, if you've ever been in the military or connected with family members who have been, is there for you.
Exactly. Friends as well. So battle buddies and friends, if they served in the military one day, if they got a bad discharge or good discharge, it doesn't matter. The organization helps them. People who die on active duty are very easily connected to our organization. But people who have retired or who spent just a few years in and are no longer serving, those we have no way of knowing, or the organization has no way of knowing that they died. So either the VA or counselors or family members or people just searching find that organization, and it provides that support to them just as though they were on active duty when they passed away. So those family members can get the support regardless of how long the person served or whether the service was good or bad.
I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the difference between suicide and other deaths?
The biggest difference is there's a lot of stigma around suicide. It can be a very complex death affecting many people. An example for I can give you is my wife and I went to a support group early on at Fort Lee, Virginia, and there were two other military families there whose sons had died in combat. And as the other two families were saying who they lost, when it came to us, it became quite difficult because these two soldiers died in battle in Iraq and Afghanistan, and ours didn't. So we felt very uncomfortable speaking about the suicide death because of the stigma. So we have since learned that it's up to us to ignore that stigma and educate people to
Mm-hmm.
let them know that death of someone by suicide is no less than any other death, and that there's nothing to be ashamed of, and that there may or may not have been a mental illness involved, uh, but none of that matters. What it comes down to is, you know, you've lost somebody and you're grieving.
Right.
I love that you're building awareness, John, for this. It is so important. So important. My son, who I said was an Army veteran, um, recently lost his battle buddy to suicide. And this was about 2 years ago. It has been absolutely devastating because as well as anybody, battle buddies are brothers. It's more than a friendship. We need more men like you out there saying, hey, it's okay to talk about these things and ask for help and get help, etc. You did recently, I Googled you. You have a lot of videos out there. If anyone wants to see John, he's got a lot of words of wisdom out there on the internet. You did something with TAPS on post-traumatic growth. Can you tell us a little bit about how how you get to post-traumatic growth. I mean, what it is and what happens.
Sure. So after you make those connections of with your peers, and after you have, moved forward in your grief, and you can talk about your loss and how it affects you, and you start looking forward and moving forward in your life, that's when that post-traumatic growth comes. It's you on the back end of all of the grief, all the challenges, all the heartache that you've been through. Now you are becoming more resilient. You are becoming more social. You are living life again. You are able to connect with others in a positive way, and you become a spokesperson for whatever loss you had. You learn that you can turn that tragic death into something positive by your actions, whether you are an advocate, whether you create a nonprofit, whether you do volunteer work. It's how you end up becoming stronger on the back end of that grief cycle.
That's
I love
great.
it.
Yeah. So important to reach out. If you had advice for somebody who just really recently had a suicide or the death of a family member, what would it be?
Uh, so it all depends on, how that death is affecting you. For example, I encourage people to go to counseling, but not everybody needs to go to counseling. I say if you are able to work through your grief without counseling, that's great. But when it gets to a point where you can't resolve things on your own and you're struggling, that's the time to get professional assistance. So if someone has had a recent death, if it's post funeral memorial service time, you have to take a look at where am I and who am I? Because now you're not the same person you were before. So you got to decide who I am now and where do I want to go from here. And once again, talking about it is important. It's connecting to the people to talk to, whether that's someone professional or someone personal. Having that conversation about how you feel and not keeping those feelings inside is what's most important after that initial death.
Mhm. Good advice. And wow, it's been what?
16.
Oh, 16? Oh,
Hmm.
okay. So you're way out. But it's still a journey and a trip and you
Absolutely. Like I mentioned before, I still have a hole in my heart. It's not as
Mhm.
big, and the pain isn't as great as it used to be. But I tell folks any moment of any day can take me back to the day I lost them, and that's okay.
yeah,
That's, grief is not something you should turn off. You carry it with you. And I can tell you that uh, the first time that I got up and spent the day and I didn't think about my son, I felt guilty about it.
mhm,
But I realized that, you know, it didn't make my love for him any less. Um, and I didn't have to feel guilty about it. And would want me and everybody else in the family to move forward in our lives, without him.
right. I like to say that first of all, I don't want to forget my son. It's been wow,
Absolutely.
over 40 years for me. I don't want to forget him. And if it touches my heart, I find if something really hits me, I recover faster. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Go on, but I still have that spark of love and
Yeah. The anniversary dates of them dying and birthdays and holidays. I always bring up those emotions because they're not there. And, it's a significant date for you, but that's okay. If we love them, those days and times are going to affect us.
Mhm.
Um, and like you said, I don't want to forget them. I want to move forward. I don't want to move on.
right, exactly
I
so.
like that. I like that, John. You want to move forward. You don't want to move on. I like that. Carry them with us and carry them in our hearts and have a continuing connection with them in a different way. Maybe it's
Mhm.
not the way that we planned, but it's plan B.
Absolutely.
Well, what a wonderful work and thoughts you've done in memory of your son, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you.
Jon, thank you so much. I have observed you many, many times from afar, and I know how important you've been to the TAPS community and how many lives you've touched. And I just want to thank you for being an example that you can find hope again after loss.
Thank you. And you've been a great value to TAPS as well.
Thanks, Jon.
Well, Heidi and I want to thank everybody for joining us on this show today. And we always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.